All right, there we go. Hey, what is up, everybody? It is June with Ray Signs. My screen did a weird thing. What is up, everybody? It is June with Ray Signs, and today I got a nice video for you guys. If you guys saw it on my screen, there is a little to-do list because we are going to be following a couple of things that I want to share with you guys. So, first of all, today we are going to be talking about vehicle lettering. So the example that I have is a real life client that is a truck, and I'm gonna be showing you kind of like my workflow that I use, my order like. All right, so I'm going to be showing you my vehicle lettering workflow. I'm going to be showing you how I set up the production files, and I'm going to be showing you also how I set up the work orders for vehicle lettering in general. So it's going to be a good video. Sit tight. We're actually going to be trying to get this put together within like 30 minutes or so, just showing you the entirety of the process of production. So let's get into it. All right, guys. Like I said, here is our little like itinerary of what we're going to be discussing. We're going to be talking about truck lettering workflow, and that just doesn't go for trucks. That goes for any vehicle. We use the same process for any vehicle. We're going to go for the work order setup for truck lettering, and we're also going to be doing the production files. So I'm going to kind of briefly touch on each one of these items so you guys have an idea of what we got going on and how I actually go about doing this. But if you guys hold on for just 1 second, I'm going to verify that my audio is working. All right, cool. I just wanted to make sure that my audio was working because I did film this video an hour ago and I completely messed up and my audio wasn't working. All right, so first things first, let me show you guys a couple of things. Let me show you around on my desktop, if you will. So first, I need to kind of close this Streamlabs thing over here. So I'm going to close that. I'll close my chat over here. And so to start off, what is a work order and what are we even doing? So whenever we do anything that has to do with vehicles or in general any signage that we do here, we always have a work order for the design. So here's just some quick printed out samples that I have of work orders, and I can show you guys other samples as well that I have. But this right here is a work order for a car wrap. As you can see, it's basically a layout that shows what is going to be happening, what are the graphics that are going to be put on here, and this helps the team determine what exactly is going on, right? Because when it comes to signs, there is a whole workflow. When it comes to car wraps, there is a whole workflow that we follow because we are working in a team. We're not just working as one person. And having something like this just kind of helps you. It's kind of like one of those IKEA instruction kits. It comes with a thing, and you can assemble it and make a great product out of it. So after that, so that is one thing that we have available. The one thing that we do here. Okay, somebody was about to walk in. That is a an option. One of these, and then here is another type of work order that we have. This is for a sign. So as you see, depending on the project, the work order kind of changes up a little bit. But we are going to be discussing vehicle lettering today. Let me show you guys an example that we recently did, and let me kind of share that process with you. So we got the okay, so here's an example of a vehicle that we just put lettering on and how it works. A brief explanation of the process of vehicle lettering is we'll create a design and we'll make a like quick design mock-up like that, and then after the design is made, and I'll try to pull up some photos here. There it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Okay. So basically, the process is the client comes in, we take measurements and stuff like that. Then off of those measurements, we'll go ahead and make several design options. And luckily for us, in this case, it was a very fast. Whoa, what's going on with my screen? It was a very fast, kind of easy design. So we only had this option really as a viable option. So we have this design mock-up. The mock-up gets approved, and then we start making the production files, which is what I'm going to show you But once the production files are all set and ready to go, then the installation team will pretty much take this work order that we have here. If you need a quick, easy, cost-effective solution to marketing and branding. So they'll take this work order, as you can see, and they'll go ahead and install the graphics. As you can see, my boy KO was over here getting his thing done. And they keep that work order with them right there at all times while they're working in order to make sure that the process comes out like as intended, as it was designed. And here's kind of like the final product, and we kind of we do that for every single one of our installations. So that is why it's very important to have, I'm trying to find another quick sample for you guys to kind of understand why this process that we're going to go into and that we're going to dive into is very important to kind of, like why I am asking for these specific measurements. So anyway, here's kind of like another overview of the process. You can see that Kevin right here, he has a work order. So during installation, that work order is super important. It's kept next to the installer, that this design is guiding them. It's telling them, hey, this is where I need the things to be installed. And it just makes everything go by so much smoother. It makes your graphics, like, it helps them place the graphics exactly where they need to be placed. And it's really just that simple, having things done the correct way. Okay, so now, oops, again, my screen is messing up. I keep opening a bunch of tabs. All right, so now we're gonna go in and discuss today's project. So today's project is actually going to be this one right here, live in action. Where are we? Okay, so live in action. This right here is the project that we are working on, and it is the Robert Gutters box truck here. And this is a super simple design. Again, we keep getting these simple designs to do, but I love doing videos on these because these are so beginner friendly. That way you can get an idea of what we're doing and like actually understand the process. Like, once it escalates, once it gets a little bit more complex, once you're getting into things like full wraps like this Tesla right here, you want to be precise, you want to be keen, you want to be like ready to go. So having a good foundation on basic stuff will get you allow you to have good results at the end of the day on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into this now. Before I show you what my workflow is, I do have this quick little kind of like graph that I did just to show what I do mentally. I just kind of wrote it out and wanted to show you guys it written out step by step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you follow these 5 steps, these 5 little steps are going to basically make sure that everything goes perfectly every time. Okay, so the 3 files, I'm going to discuss the steps in a second, but the 3 files that I call like my production file. So once the things get approved by the client, these 3 files are what I expect to be done every single time by myself, by my design team, whatever, whether it's me working on it or another designer on my crew. These are the 3 files that are expected to be produced by a designer. Just that simple, okay? So first file that I want to discuss is the working file that you see here and these terms, I just kind of store them in your mind because these are what I'm going to be talking about during the whole like when I show you guys this actually like in action, when I show you 1, 2, 3, this is what I'm going to be referring it to as. So just kind of store it in your brain. We got the working file, final design file, and the production file. So let's talk about the working file. The working file is what I like to use as like my scratch paper. And an example of this is the Robert Gutters working file. So this is basically where I throw down all the designs, and the working file is used by me, by the other designers, by like, so we kind of bounce this file around between us and the design team. One designer could start it and then the other designer could take over, and then vice versa. So this is a working file. It's where all the scraps go to live. Let me get a little bit of water. Whoa. All right, so This is where everything comes to live here. Like, you could be as sloppy as you want here. It doesn't have to be precise. It doesn't have to be anything. But in the working file, there is one thing that I always want to talk about in the working file. Working file, your sizes should always be sized, especially when we're working in signage. Signage is one of those things that we have to be pretty accurate. We have to turn something that is essentially a digital drawing, something that isn't real, and we have to turn it into a reality. And when we do this, we're working with sizes over and over and over again. So when we have these sizes that we are having to make sure that we need it to actually produce it to a real life thing, you want to make sure that these things are sized to scale to the correct proper dimensions so we don't have any issues further down the line. And you'll see with these files that they were already sized to the proper size, so we didn't have any of those issues. But if they weren't, we would have major issues when it came to like actually like producing this graphic. So that is the working file, and all my working files look something like this. All of my working files on my design team, they all look something like this. Like, it's kind of messy, kind of sloppy, nothing like really clean or crispy, right? But they're like that for a reason. They're our chicken scratch. Now we got the final design file, and the final design file, what is going to be the final design file for me is going to be a file that looks something along the lines of this right here. And this is what a final design file would look like. It's kind of empty except this box that I have here, but that was just for the text for this video. And it's just empty. It just has the design that was approved by our client, and then it's gonna have that's it. It's just gonna have the empty final design. Like, I could hit print on this, and then I could give it to my team, and they would know, hey, this is what was approved. So you want to keep things clean on that final design file. Sometimes our final design file will look like this one in the Tesla. Sometimes they'll look a little bit different. Let me kind of try to pull up another example real quick. Let's see if I can pull up something. Sometimes they'll look a little something like this guy right here. Sometimes they'll look something like this. So final design file, basically I just want a clean setup, a clean layout that shows me boom boom boom. These are the this is what needs to be applied onto the graphics. Keep it clean, none of that extra junk. All right, so that's my final design file. The next file that I want to discuss is the production file. My production files end up looking a little bit like this right here. And there we go. Okay. And the production file looks a little bit like this. And once we get really into it, once we really start working things up, it will look something like this. So let me go in here and let's put it on preview. Okay, so they will look something a little bit like this, where we have the layout of every single side, so you can see that it's labeled. You got the passenger side, the driver's side, you have all the graphics all laid out. Basically, it's like a big layout of everything that needs to get printed, and kind of like a little checklist is what I like to think about it in the production file. And this is already to scale to the actual size that it needs to be printed. So that's your production file right there. So when I'm talking about the files as I go along, and I'm like jabbering about what needs to be done and what needs to be in what place, this is kind of how I'm gonna go and label them and talk about them. So you got the working file, final design file, and your production file. Just lock those names in. All right, so now let's talk about the first couple steps that we need to take. These 5 simple steps are gonna be what we need for a great production design experience, so we're not tweaking over there. All right, so step number 1, finalize. And sorry if there's any misspellings, I can't spell, so yeah, not a spelling bee champ over here, so don't worry about the spelling, just go with it. All right, so step number 1, finalize the design file in the working file. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna go into my working file, and I'll show you guys. Working file, where are you? All right, so I'm gonna go into my working file, and what I'm gonna be doing in my working file is I'm gonna be finalizing everything before I send it, before I clean it up and I send it over to another file format. Okay, so I'm basically gonna go in here and I'm gonna make sure that this right here is all cleaned up. This was sent to me by my other designer because we kind of share files, but I'm kind of finalizing the actual production files for them. So this is kind of what I'm saying when I mean finalizing. So before send this out, I'm going to make sure that the font is outlined in the correct font. I'm going to make sure that these sizes are corrected. Just kind of make sure that it's in the general correct area that it needs to be. And then once this is exactly where I need it to be, I'm going to go ahead and make a new file. So I'm just going to hypothetically say that this is ready to go. This is the design that has been chosen, and this is ready to go. Obviously, I have it open in another page, but this is kind of just the process. Just go with it. All right, so this, I'm going to go ahead and like copy it, make a new file like that, and then just in the new file would be my finalized design file. So I'll have that finalized design file. I'll start throwing down these finalized designs here because these were the ones that were selected. And if it's not perfectly clean yet, I'm not going to stress about it. I mainly want to give them their own section. That is the reason why I'm putting it in a different file, because I want to give them their own page so I can focus on it and not have all this other junk around it. So I want to focus in and get locked in with basically doing that. So once I get locked in and have that done, I don't really need to mess around with the working file, but a couple notes about the working file and how what would be a good setup is to have text like in two ways. So typically, this is like I said, somebody else's working file. But typically, what I would do is I would have the finalized design. I would make a copy, and this text I would outline it, because if I have to send this over to another designer, they're not gonna be able to see this text right here. Yes, you can always click on it, and whoop, click on it, and then it's gonna tell you the name, and I can easily download that font. Go in, download the font, call it a day. Don't have to really stress out about it. But if I'm sending this to another designer, they don't need to be doing all the extra steps, all the extra work. So I'm going to go ahead and already have my file, my font already outlined. It's going to be ready to go. So if anybody else opens it, it's easy for them to understand. Okay? And the reason why I'm going to have a copy is because I always want to have a copy of my file. This is a pro tip. I always want to have a copy of my file that can be edited, that can be worked on later down the line, whether it be today, whether it be a year from now. You want to have a file that can be easy to edit at any point in time. So having copies helps out a lot. That's why I do a bunch of copies, a bunch of iterations. As I do the iteration, I'll either save a new file or I'll just slap a copy right next to the one. This is mainly so our team can work together and there's no there's nothing that needs to be done. But this is also essential. So you cannot delete your working editable file just because you have an outline file. Do not do that. Again, do not do that. Make sure that you have both an editable file and an outline file. It's just going to save so much time, work, and effort in the future. It kind of future proofs you and it future proofs your team. So just keep that in mind when creating files. All right. So at that point, once I have kind of isolated my three little, like my three views that are going to be in the design, the next step that I'm going to be doing is jumping it. At that point, I'm done with the working file. I'm done with step 1. I can go ahead and move on to step 2. Sorry, gotta have a water break. And step 2 is pretty much make a new design file with the final design. So pretty much I've already made the new design file. And what I mean by the final design is that I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get real detailed. I'm going to go into the nitty gritty and get real detailed. So I'm going to hop into this one because this was our finalized file already. I kind of jumped ahead of time. I time traveled. All right. So I'm going to jump ahead of time and I am going to. Okay. All right. Sorry. Ooh, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go in here, and this is my finalized file, and what it says to do is that I have to edit this. And basically what I'm going in here and doing is looking at all the details. So what I mean by the details is I'm going to go look at all the sizes. And actually, guys, we're going to be discussing the Adobe new tool that came out, the dimensions tool. This is a great tool that we're going to be discussing in a moment, so make sure that you guys are locked in for this next part. All right, so I'm going to be making sure that all these things are super how do you say it, super like perfect, super to size, make sure everything is exactly where I want it, because this final file right here is going to be what I'm going to be using to guide my team through that installation process. As you know, they're going to have that worksheet next to them, and I want to make sure that it looks as close as possible to what the real outlook is going to look like. All right, so a couple check marks that we're going to check right here is I'm going to actually pull up my survey. So we do it pretty simple here. Nothing beats a tape measure for these types of surveys when it comes to vehicles, because they are kind of, sometimes they have like curbs and stuff like that. Luckily this is a box truck, so it'll be a super easy thing to show you guys. But in events of trucks and stuff like that, it might get a little bit more complicated. Cars a little more complicated, full wraps and stuff. But you follow these same principles. So I'm going to get the measurement that they took out of the survey. And the way that we do surveys here, just another tip for surveys, is that we are going to go in and we are going to take a picture as wide as possible, so showing the full tape measure. And then we're going to take a picture close up showing the measurement where it ends. So that gives you a guiding point, a guiding line for whenever you are designing. You kind of have the information locked in, so you can make the approximations when it comes to size and where it comes to you actually showing where things need to be laid out. So here we have this picture, and you can tell that the full width of it is going to be at 85. Okay, so with that information in mind, I'm going to hop back in here, and I'm going to roll out my dimensions tool, because this is something I always check. No matter if I made the file or somebody else makes the file, I always check this. No matter who makes the file, people make mistakes. You might even make a mistake when making your own file, so it's good to double check, especially before things get into production, because once you cut this material, I mean, you pretty much lost it. If you lost it, you lost it, and you're wasting money and time at that point, and nothing aggravates me more than wasting time and money. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my dimensions tool. Funny thing about the dimensions tool that I've noticed is that if you want to get a dimension from one side of this picture to the other side, you do have to lock in the layer like that. And then once you lock in the layer, then I'll let you kind of click around and put the dimension wherever you need to. But if you don't have that layer locked in, if I didn't have my layer locked in, this, and I'll label it for you guys, this design layer locked, and what would happen is that it won't let me put it where I want to. So that's not good. That's awful. It's kind of garbage, actually. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and label this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can kind of get into these little nitty gritty spots. And I'm going to go like the tape measure. Click there, and then click right there. And then you can have these little extension arms, so you can put it right there. So it's telling me that I have this sized up at 85.5. Pretty close to the actual size, so good job, Adobe. It's pretty accurate. Half an inch is not gonna kill us. That's what she said, but whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and keep it rolling on this. And dimensions tool, it's super cool. It's super nice. I just started implementing it into my workflow. As soon as I saw it, I thought it was a funny little icon. I clicked on it, and bro, it literally is a lifesaver. Adobe should have come out with something like this, but needless to say, we're going to do a quick little overview on it. Dimensions tool, you can click on learn more. You can learn about everything that comes included with it, but things that we're focused on, the main thing that it does, it's a measuring tool that helps you add dimensions and plot dimensions. So you can plot distances, angles, and radii. So that means that you can basically do what I just did, just click one point to another point, and gives you that exact measurement. Cool thing about it is, and cool thing for signage, is that it does work very well, and that it it not just works well, but it comes with a lot of different little features that you can customize. So if I click on the gear icon right here, you can see that it opens up this tab, and in the dimensions tool there's so many things that you can mess around with on this. And what I like about it is that you can this like the standout feature for me is the scale, because we always use 1/10 scale. So being able to control those units helps out a lot. And I can do a quick rundown of what it does, this tool, real quick. All right, so I'm just gonna do a quick rundown of what the tool does. And oops, I forgot to start the timer. All right, I was trying to stay on time, for this. So yeah, I forgot to start the timer. It don't matter. Okay, so we got the dimensions tool, and basically, here are some of the things that are key features. You got the units. You can always change between whatever units you want. I typically just stick with the document units, because when I set up my documents, I always make sure that I'm in the correct unit. Typically, it's inches. But if you wanted to kind of mess around, or you had to send a prototype to another country or something, you can always change out the units, and it does it automatically. No work for you. Scale, like I said, I always use 1/10 scale, but there's always a 1:1 scale as one if you want to keep it original sizes. And then there's all these other crazy scales. All right. Precision. This is also very key in sign making, because we do need to know in these layouts the precise steps. Sometimes I want to get really precise. Sometimes I'm giving them a general step. I have it set to like about 1/2 inch, because there is that 1/2 inch difference. So there is no need to get super precise in the quarter. I was doing it in these like quarter increments, but it doesn't really help that much. So like when it translates to real life, that Jay's mobile diesel example that I showed you guys earlier, that one, we use the same method that I'm about to show you for laying things out and for doing the work order, but it didn't translate exactly like it was about a 1/2 inch off. So I think I'm gonna just kind of scale it back, go to this 1/2 inch, and that's precise enough to get them a good enough measurement to get it done. Okay. So next step, I'm hopping into dimension lines and extension lines. These kind of all work together. Dimension lines is this line that you see back here. So let's kind of jump into it and show you guys real quick. So the dimension line is this line right here, the long one that you see right there. That's basically what that is saying. What color do you want that? What do you want to add to it? You want to add an arrow, you want to add some dashes, you want to add a different color, you want to like how thick you want it, you want the arrow to be scaled this way, that way. That's what that line is controlling. The extension line is the line that's right here. So this line right here, let me click on it. And they're all like separate pieces, which is great. They're all little separate vector pieces. So if any point you need to adjust it, you can really easily. So this line right here, that's your extension line, and that just kind of helps with the overall like look and clarity of things. And I'm gonna go ahead and click that. All right. And then the dimensions text, that's just basically what text that the sizes are gonna be, and you can edit it. These are my settings. You can copy them or not. It doesn't matter to me. But these are what I set them out. I have realized that depending on the project, depending on the size, I'm probably going to be editing this a lot, working on it a lot. And a quick thing is that, like, if you have the dimensions tool open, you can always just click enter, and your dimensions tool options panel will pop up, which makes it really easy to kind of be like measuring something. And then, like, let's say you want to change a color, you can kind of do it on the fly. So it is pretty nice the way they set it up. I do hope that they add I need to sit down. I hope that they add a couple more features into it. If they did, that'd be great. If they don't, I could still live with it. I used to use this tool called Spacies, and I still use it because it is handy for other reasons. So I will be working on a video. I actually am working on a video right now, kind of diving into using the dimensions tool a little bit deeper, and also using Spacies and how you can combine them, mix and match them to kind of get a nice result and kind of how Spacies works in comparison to the dimensions tool. But if you guys are interested in Spacies, let me know in the comment section down below. Basically, here's a little quick snippet of what Spacies does. So with the Adobe tool, you have to basically measure things up, down, all by yourself. And then Spacies, you can actually have these layers locked. Let me unlock it. Spacies, with one click of one button, you can get all these different dimensions, and there's like area. Let's see. There's the artboard selection. There's a specific radius, distance between objects, dimensions, height, width, angles, curves, all of that good stuff. And with one click of a button, you can basically lock all that in. I don't know if it shows it. I don't know if it's showing it. Let's just save this back. So one click of a button, you can pretty much lock all that in. And yes, it does have scaling, and yes, it does have other cool features that it can do. So there is all these little tabs here that you can open. You can control the font. Pretty much, it can do what the Adobe tool can do in one click, with a couple like different caveats. I do think the Adobe tool works better for like that measuring between distances, and this is mainly for labeling items and labeling distances. Another cool that this one does that Adobe's doesn't do it is that it labels kind of like say I have some text here, right? It also is great for like logo design. So if you're designing a logo and you want like to put the color and the text and all this like good information, it also does that. So let's say I had that one, and then I had this in like pinky color and some, I don't know, some font like that. I can do the, oops, I'll do it down here. I'll do it right there. All right, so it gives me the sizes right there. It gives me the exact color code, and you can do that. You can also do it in like RGB mode. So there is a lot of cool stuff that you can do right then and there, but I'm not gonna really mess with that right now. It's not necessary, but I just wanted to show you guys that the Adobe tool isn't the only thing out there that is a paid plugin, but you can use the Adobe tool and save you some money. So, you know, pros and cons and different tools, because this wasn't available for a long time, and now it is, making our job so much easier and making us be able to have more time to work on things like this, the work orders, and making things look good and presentable and things like that. So we don't have to worry about the technicalities of it. Anyway, let's jump back into our steps. So we make a new design file with the final artwork. So yeah, so we have this design file, right? And like I said, we're checking all the stuff. First thing that we checked was the size, make sure that it was to scale. So we're at 10th scale, we're good, we're golden on that. There we go, we're good, we're golden on that, pretty nice. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna check all these other files. And what we're gonna check is basically the sizing. I personally like sizes to be nice, clean, round numbers. I find that helps a lot when installing. That helps a lot when doing the production. It helps a lot with saving material and saving time. So if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna be good designers, we want to think about what our like final outcome is gonna be. Okay, so this was set at a very strange, weird size, like at a 3.678 blah blah blah, but I rounded it to a nice 3.5, and that's what I like to do with all my sizes. These circles are a perfect size of 5 inches, and like I said, it is 10th scale, so you see a 0.5 there. But I'll do it here in the back of the bus, in the back of this thing. As you can see, if you look at my size right now, it's at a 0.68. So I don't like sizes like that. I really don't like them because they're hard to work with, hard to get the measurements. It's just a waste of time to do that. So I'm just going to round it to a nice clean 7. It gives it the same look. I either go up or go down by that point. Close it out. Give me a nice solid number. All right, same thing here. We got a 3.2 blah, blah, blah. Nah, that's not working for me. So I'm going to go ahead, and I typically pick whether I want to go with a solid number for the height or the width. Right now, depending on the design. Right now, I'm just gonna do it by the height. Let's see. So 0.336 turns into 0.3. No, that's not gonna work. So let's turn it into point. So 0.33. Let's just turn it 0.35, and that's around the same size. There's not much size variation. We just went up a little bit, and that gives me a nice clean size. And then here, I'm actually going to hop into here and steal this logo, which has been cleaned up already. Another thing about it is that when you make these finalized files, that you have to check all the little details. Here you can tell that this logo is still in the grimy stage. Because we did have to get the logo. We did have to get the logo away from this business card. So the client didn't have their original vector logo, so we had to basically draw it out by hand from this business card, and that's basically what we did here. So when we were creating the initial rough draft designs, there's no point of going in, and especially when we don't have a solid confirmation on what the final design is going to be, there's no point of doing like like when we do the mock-ups, we do them fast so we can deliver it fast, close the sale fast, and get it done. So that is why this logo is kind of rough. We just took it straight from here, did a scan and put it in Adobe. But once we are doing the production, we have to go back and clean this information, make sure it's nice, and now we have the luxury of the time to actually work on it, versus when we don't have, like, if the sale is not closed fully and if the sale is not fully done, then there's no point to invest that much time in it, because that time and effort could be going towards a design for someone that has already either paid the deposit or is ready to pay a deposit, rather than wasting time making all these designs and that design not even be used, never see the daylight. So that's why a rough design like this is acceptable during the working period, but now that you're going into production, it is not acceptable. So we have to clean this up, whether it be by hand, whether we find a vectorization tool. Just a quick things for vectorizing logos like this. If you ever run into this situation, there's a couple things you can do. You can pop it like here. I had the logo of the business card. As you see, I popped it into Photoshop, and then that kind of helped me clean it up a bit. It worked a little bit, and then once I had it in Photoshop, I jumped into Vector Magic. And if Vector Magic, it can turn anything into a it can turn anything into a vector, any image that you have. So I'll go and here I'll pop it in, and then I'll turn that into a vector. And if I'm still not satisfied with that, if that is not clean enough, then what I will do is I'll draw it by hand, and that's just how you do it. Just depends. I do like to go through the the Vector Magic process first, just because it is a simpler solution and we like to work smarter, not harder. But in this case, it didn't really give me the result I wanted, because I thought this could be really clean, really cleaned up. So we just ended up doing it by hand, but that's fine too. Oops. I don't know why my screen didn't change. You guys are not seeing the same thing Okay. All right. But let me know if you guys saw that Vector Magic screen. Vector Magic is just like this. It basically a program that vectorizes. You can see compared right to left. And yeah, this is paid program though, so if you don't vectorize things all the times, we get sent logos sometimes that are really choppy, and sometimes they're easy to convert. Sometimes they just send us PNGs. So this works better than the Adobe than the Adobe tool that's integrated in here. I know that it has a feature here that outlines things, that expands things, that makes things into objects. So does Photoshop, but those vectorizing tools don't work as well as the Vector Magic. That's why I like it. But yeah, but some people, might not like it at all. All right, but anyway, so that is how you vectorize it. Once you get it all cleaned up and nice, then you'll have a clean logo just like this one. And I'll take that clean logo. Boop, boop. All right, I'll take that clean logo, and this one is super big, super big. So I'm gonna make it small. Maybe not. Not right. All right, so we got this nice clean logo, and I'll put them side by side. We'll group that. And here we go. All right, so we got the nice big clean logo. As you see, there's a lot of rough cut on that R over there, and you can tell that this logo is a lot cleaner. Look at these lines compared to it. Once we clean up the logo, that is what a production file should look like. A nice clean vector versus the rough cut vector. So we do keep that in mind here. Make sure everything is nice. It helps production. It helps the overall look of things. Don't want no sloppy vectors anywhere near us. Cool. So we got that set up. And that's pretty much the setup. Another thing that I might want to check is make sure that things are aligned. So I'll delete that. And this is supposed to be aligned. The font is kind of strange. Yeah, it is pretty aligned. Let's see that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So that's aligned as well as it needs to be aligned or whatever. And then we are going to go ahead and I'll do it in the back. I actually already, whoops, I forgot about this right here. This little guy. I almost forgot about you, guy. So this will just be a 2-inch type of deal right there. Cool. All right. So after we're done with that, let's move on to the next step that I had here in our flow chart. So after we create a new design, a new file with the final design, which is what we did, create an artboard for each side. So that's just something I would do. I would create an artboard for each one of these, and a quick way to do it is just click on the actual artboard. Just click on it and click on it, and then it puts an artboard inside of the other artboard, and that's pretty much all you got to do. that's just what I do, to be honest with you. I keep it simple, I keep it brief, and I keep it easy to understand. Okay? So all right, so now we are going to go ahead and step into the next step, which is creating a new production file. So once I have that all sized up, I'm going to go ahead and take this and let me double check the size on this because I didn't really check the size on this. So it's a weird number. I'm going to change it to 20. Yeah, 20 will work. I'll just push that up a little bit. So yeah, it won't hit. The other thing that I'm checking is that it doesn't, like, I don't want it to hit any of these little rivets. If it has to, it has to, but if I can avoid it, I will. Especially for this little strange design. So I might make it 22. So that side avoids it. Alright, so that looks like it's even on both sides. Alright, so yeah, that looks like it'll kind of miss it on this side and that side. There, I just want to make sure that it misses it on both sides, so I might just move this a little bit over, which is a little bit different than the other designs, but it doesn't matter right now because I want to avoid... See, as you can see, I'm just trying to avoid the rivets at all costs, like my life depends on it. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right, so once that is all sized up, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is I basically just grab this, I copy it. This is exactly what I do. I copy it, I paste it out here in the abyss, and then I go and delete the background, and now I have this right here, which I will copy. And again, I checked all the details. I made sure that the sizes were exactly where I wanted them to be. Like, I checked that everything was the right size. That's very important, to check that everything is in the right size and in the right space, because that's going to help overall make sure that everything is correct for the next couple steps. So size, perfect. Make sure it is perfect before you do this step. So we got the size, and now we're going to jump into a production file. I'll open a new file. I'll do that number, open a new file. But I do already have one set up for the sides because, like I said, I had already kind of got into it and started with it. I actually had recorded this video and then the audio didn't work. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and we are going to... One second. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna jump into here, and this is where I have my production files. And as you can see, this one's really big and then this one's really small, and that's because it is in 10th scale. And in order to fix that, or yeah, basically fix that, all I gotta do is put it into actuality. So just move the 10th scale like that, and boom, we are in business. Now it is the proper size that it needs to be. This is a one color graphic, so it's not that big of a deal. We don't have to do much work to it, but if it were a different color graphic, then we would be separating the colors and we'd be going in and still labeling the colors and stuff like that. But one color graphic, not a big deal. We can easily get this done. So that's a production file. Another thing that I like to do for the production file, this is just me. I like it. I want to make sure that everything is nice and labeled. And these labels get cut because of the plotter that we have. I do think that it cuts really fast. So you can literally be cutting stuff like this. Like it cuts so fast that you don't really need to pay attention to it. It does the work by itself. And in that case, when it does the work by itself, you can let it go. Like send job, send job, send job. And when you're sending that many jobs to it at one time, what happens is that if you don't have things labeled, they might get mixed up. Like people, sometimes the graphics are pretty obvious, so they don't. But most of the time, I'm just gonna do this. Just put a little label that says where each thing goes, and it's not gonna be an intrusive label. I always make my label the vertical way, just because that kind of makes it look weird. It looks different, stands out, so they know that it's a label and not part of the design. Okay, so I'll make it look a little bit different than the design, and then I don't know if this is gonna get cut into two parts, so I'll just put the other label there. Cool. All right. So this might get cut on its own, and then this might be cut on its own, and then I'll just label each little section so everybody knows where each thing is gonna go. I'll make that one a little smaller. Cool. So now each one of these is nice and labeled depending on how things are gonna get cut. I might want to add a label here, might want to add a label there. This can be smaller. Our plotter can cut pretty small without any issues, so that's it. I don't want to abuse it. I don't want to use too much space. I don't want to waste space, so I'm not going to put it too far back. I'm trying to get it as close as possible, and then once people are like applying it or whatever, we can just cut this section off. It doesn't have to be applied to the actual design, but it helps to label things so much. I'm all about labeling your stuff, label your layers, label the production files, everything. So you want to make sure that it has it in strategic points. If this graphic is too big for what your plotter can handle, or just whatever, you want to have it there. The production team sometimes does it on their own and puts the labels, but as a designer, you should have this in mind as well. It just helps a lot during production. And that's one of the things that I can jump into and talk about a little bit deeper. So, as a designer, and especially when you're designing for production, for producing something in real life, you want to keep in mind what everybody else has to do, because that's going to help you stand out as far as your job as a designer and as far as like making your shop flow a lot better. So, what I mean by that is that when you are designing, put yourself mentally inside the shoes of the production team when you're designing the production files, and put yourself in the shoes of the installation team. When you do that, when you take that extra step and you think about the process of actually making something come true, from a digital standpoint to a real life standpoint, you kind of think of things that you wouldn't think of during the design process, if that makes sense. Like labeling these things with the back, you wouldn't care about it in a design like aspect of it, but you do care about it in a production aspect because there is like other jobs being printed. So, help people out, get their job done easier. And when you have a designer, you can just click, 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 done. It makes it so much more easier than when you are doing an installation and you're sitting there and you're like measuring things with the tape measure and stuff. So you definitely want to consider what other people like put yourself in the shoes of the production, put yourself in the shoes of the install, so you can make a better design, so you can have a design that not only looks good but that also works well, and not just works for you but works for your whole team and your client. Now let's jump into it. All right, jumping back into this production file, check. Now let's jump into step number 5. Step number 5 is return to the design file and add the production and installation measurements. So as you see, these are 5 steps. It does take a minute to get all these done. I have already pre-prepped some stuff, but I'm just saying, like, take your time. Like, I really take my time in this. In these two, step 3 and 4, I really take my time in it. So then step 5 becomes such a breeze. So that is something that, like, if you take your time in these, everything else will be easy. And once you get it locked in, once you get locked into these 5 little steps, life is easy. The designing production files is easy. You can get it done in less than 30 minutes, like all of this work, and save hours of installation, save hours of production if you get these locked in for design. So let's return to the design file and add the production measurements. All right, so jumping into that real quick, what's it gonna look like? What's that looking like? Where is our file? Where are you, file? Okay, here it is. So this is essentially what we're gonna be creating. All right, this is essentially what we're gonna be creating. What we're gonna be creating is this right here, what I like to call putting the measurements for installation on there. And the installation measurements, let me show you 2 samples actually. So this right here is the one we did for J, Diesel, whatever. And this has the blue measurements and the green measurements. The green measurements represent the overall size of the graphics. So I would pretty much share that with production so they know this needs to be, this size. This is what I intended the size to be. And then the blue is indicators where it should be installed. So it should be installed, like, for example, 6 inches to here and 6 inches to here. So that is what we're focusing on right now. I'm just going to focus on sharing with you guys this for the rubber gutters. I'm going to show you how to do the measurements for the installers and where kind of like what I'm thinking when I'm making these measurements. So let's just do it for the back just because I have already done it for this side. And just a quick overview on this is basically the reason why I'm putting these measurements is to make sure that the actual graphics are centered on when they are applied. So by giving them the measurements, I give them a good idea and a good point, like a point of reference where they can start. It's not 100% it's not 100% accurate just because the Adobe tool isn't 100%. And the reason why it's not 100% in this use case is because we are working with real life objects that are in 3-dimensional space, and this is a 2-dimensional tool. So there's curves, there's ridges, there's rivets, there's stuff like that in the way of our design. So there's stuff like that in the way of our design. So that isn't taken into consideration in the program, but you get a pretty good idea. You get a pretty good gist of where things need to land and stuff like that. So here's basically the process that I would do. I'm thinking, hey, now I'm getting my installation hat on. So I'm thinking, where is this stuff going to go? Let's start off with this bottom number. And what I basically want to say is I want an even number from here to here. And again, I need to lock that layer because the Adobe Dimensions tool is kind of weird. And where I take the measurements from is where the installers take the measurement from. If you've never seen an installation live in person, if you are just sitting behind a desk and designing, that's fine. You don't have to know the process, but it does help a lot if you know the process. Because how they do it is they basically take a measurement from the flat area, so they wouldn't even bother with this 6. They wouldn't bother with the 6 just because it has a curve, so you could hit it in one point or one point. It's kind of hard to be consistent with that. So with a flat area, with a flat number like this, you can be consistent every time if you find the flat area. So what I'm doing is getting the distance from here to here as if I were going to be installing this graphic. and we are at 16.5, and if that's an appeasable distance for me, then I will go ahead and use this. If not, then I will scrap that, and I will put it to the right size where I want it. And I think that size will work, but I think that because there's a rivet here, so I'm trying to avoid that rivet at all costs, like my life depends on it, just to save somebody's day from being messed up. So let's see, can I get away with 16 on the track? Let's see. And all I'm gonna do is align it to the bottom and then try to come here and try to align that. Okay, so I can get away with 16. That's pretty nice, pretty clever. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is make sure that layer is locked, of course. And now I want to get the width. So the way I'm thinking about it is I'm thinking about this graphic. I'm thinking about this graphic, and I think about all the graphics like a block. Like if this were a little block like that, right? And I have this block, and in order to measure this block or to get it centered, I have to take measurements from, let's change the color, please. I have to take the measurements from here, 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 and sometimes here and here. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to go in with my dimensions tool, and if I were going to be installing this, I have to kind of align myself with this angle, and then that angle, and then this angle. So that is kind of what I'm thinking whenever I'm going in here and adding those measurements. Like if I were installing this, I would kind of need to know where, like, these green points are my guidelines. If I can get those to all line up, then everything else will line up in the graphic. That's all I need, those 6 points. Sometimes just the 4 corners gets it done. Depends on the size of the graphic. Smaller graphics, the 4 corners is all you need. And then the bigger graphics, you'll probably need a little bit more info. All right, so let's talk about here. We got 5.5. And then I want to make sure it's nice and centered. And where I take it really is I take the biggest pieces. So like the outer edge of this 7, and then I'll take it to whatever. All right, and as you can see, whenever I laid it out, it was not an even layout. We got 5.5 and we got 4. And the way that I get the measurement for that is, like, the median is simple primary math. 5.5 plus 4, we got 9.5, and then that's the distance that we have empty between that graphic. So I just divide that by 2, and you get 7.5. 7.5, no, 4.75. Oh god. All right, so since my measurements are only set to half, I'm just gonna do a nice 4.5 right there and a nice 4.5 right there. Okay, just because my measurements are not I didn't put them, so like I put them so it could only go to half measurements. So that'll give us an idea, and that's to like the edge right there, Junie. All right, so right there, 4.5, 4.5. And again, my installers will themselves be able to calculate like a solid distance to see, okay, yeah, this and that are going to be at a generally good place, where they can figure out where it's centered. If these measurements are not 100%, because like I said, we're translating from this 2D image, from this picture that was taken on an iPhone to the actual real life. So there is like a half-inch difference. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and kind of rinse and repeat that process. Go in here and center this off. We're giving out these measurements for installers so they know, hey, here's a starting point. You can kind of figure out the rest yourself, but here's a starting point. Here's what my recommended measurements are. Here's how I think it should be aligned. And that kind of gets the process. But when you have 2 measurements like this, that means you kind of have to move it and center it and get it in the correct spot. Do that same process, rinse and repeat. And I'll continue to carry out this process. It just takes a bit of, like, it just takes a minute. So we wanna kind of like move ahead. So it takes a minute to set that up. But once you set it up, you're gonna get something ideally like this, where you have top measurements, bottom measurements, and that's all it takes really. just making sure that, as you can see here, just a quick sample, we got a 2-inch right there, and we got a 2-inch right there, and that's top and bottom, making sure it's center. 18-inch right here and 18-inch right here. It's not complicated, guys. This is not complicated. It's mainly understanding the concept and the principle that you want things centered. So to find the center, you're going to have, like, if it's truly centered, these two measurements will be even. Only time that it's not even is when you have things like this, where the graphics are like, see how this is lower than this, but the tallest point and the lowest point are even. And that's pretty much how I do it. Tallest point, lowest point, and then furthest right, furthest left, and that's it. That thing is simple. Nothing complex about that now. All right, so we got that all set up. I'm gonna go ahead and save that file. And basically, once that's all set up, once my production files are all set up just like this, here is like a finalized production file where you have all the files, you have them labeled, and then you have it broken down into different spaces. And I'll continue to do this. Only difference between this production file and this production file was that the labels are not labeled per each item. I like to label it like this. The other designer on my team likes to label it like this, but we're going to be moving more towards this just because of how fast our production goes, and to avoid any confusion, this tends to help my team out a little bit better. So you can just adjust whatever your team likes best. But let's go back into here, and that is pretty much all the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also, these two I kind of put interchangeably because I will go bounce between 4 and 5. I'll bounce back and forth, depending on the design and depending on how comfortable I am doing it. But I recommend following this order in the beginning. Once you get more comfortable, you'll be able to interchange these two steps like crazy. And that's pretty much it. Whenever you are trying to finalize a project and you're trying to get it done the correct way, you want to make sure you got that working file, the final design file, and the production file. And that's pretty much what I use in my own setup. And with that being said, guys, we are at the end of our video. I appreciate you guys for watching today. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, let me know in the comment section below and give this video a like. Personally, let me know if you guys are using the dimensions tool, if you heard of it, if you like it, if you checked it out, if you think that this is a good thing that Adobe did. Let me know in the comment sections down below. We're going to be doing a lot more discussions on this, and we're going to be coming out with a video specifically for this dimensions tool and the spacies tool, and maybe we'll do a versus spacies versus dimensions tool, which is the best for sign designers. And that's it. Also, if you guys don't forget to subscribe, guys. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe in our channel, where we post everything that you need to know about sign making, owning a sign shop, graphic design, car wraps, everything that has to do with signs. Ray Signs is the channel for you. Check us out on TikTok at Ray Signs. Check us out on Instagram at Ray Signs. Same deal everywhere you go at Ray Signs. On TikTok, we tend to post more daily videos. So if you're interested in seeing what projects and shenanigans we're up to today, we post daily. Check us out there. Instagram, I would say you could take it and use it as inspo, since we post our finalized projects there. With that being said, my name is June with the Ray Signs. I hope you guys have a great day. Peace out. And how do I end this? Oh, there it is.